Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the first CyberEd webinar, where we're going to discuss today pathways, a scaffolded approach to cyber education. All right, we have three hosts with us today. So my name is Kevin Knowlton, the Director of Academic Outreach for the Cyber Innovation Center as well as for NICERC. And I'll let the other co-hosts introduce themselves right now.
Good morning or good afternoon, depending on your time zone. I'm Chuck Gardner. I'm the Director of Curriculum for the Cyber Innovation Center.
My name is Claire, and I work in marketing for NICERC. My name is Claire, and I work here in marketing for NICERC, and I'll be here to help keep time and check for y'all's questions. So be sure to ask away.
Thanks, guys. Well, we've got a great panel here. We've got a great opportunity for a fantastic discussion today. And just as a little background, we're going to be doing these webinars every month. So feel free to spread the word about these conversations, as well as we're going to have them recorded. So we're right now streaming live on the NICERC Facebook, as well as we're recording this conversation, so folks can go to our YouTube channel and check it out, download it, and view it for later. So, and yes, Tommy Gower, there's going to be autographs at the end. And so, just some house rules. We are watching the chat box, and so you're able to type in your questions, ask questions to the panelists, to the other attendees. And we will get to your questions and answer your questions. And that's kind of what Claire's going to be doing in the background here, is making sure Chuck and I know what questions are going to be asked. And then we will send you an electronic autograph at the end of this webinar. So a couple house rules. One of the things on these webinars that we encourage you to do is to ask questions. We want to hear from you. We want to hear from the teachers who are teaching content. We want to hear from your best practices. So if you have a story, we have a block of time at the end for questions and answers and discussions about the topics and about the things that we've presented. But if you have a question immediately, you want to enter it in the chat box, please feel free to do so. You can also raise your hand. That's where you'll get our attention. We'll unmute your audio and allow you to talk and contribute to the conversation. So real quickly, just wanted to give everyone an opportunity to have an understanding of who NICERC is. Many people who are registering for these webinars have no idea who NICERC is, but the topic is intriguing. And so during this webinar and many of the webinars that we'll do, we'll really quickly talk about a high-level overview of who we are as an organization. And then we're going to dive into the content and dive into the meat of this webinar. So today's conversation being about pathways. How do we build a series and a sequence of courses that will lead to an outcome, lead to an industry-based certification, that will lead to a set of skills that will allow a student to go straight from high school to a job in the cybersecurity industry, or to go into a 2-year or 4-year program. So Dr. Chuck Gardner will be diving into the meat of that. But before we do so, I'd like to give you that overview. So I am going to share my screen with you. And let's see here, the PowerPoint presentation. So I'm going to confirm that you can see the PowerPoint. Fantastic. So one of the things that we have to acknowledge is that we have a ginormous, a monumental, a very large gap in our cybersecurity workforce. There's a critical shortage of a workforce that we can't fill. The stats that have just, those current stats that we have, there's over 500,000 cybersecurity jobs that are available today. Now, these are unfilled jobs. These are jobs that we don't have a workforce to fill. And looking at this heat map here, you can see that different states have greater demands for this workforce. And no matter where you're from, you can take a look at this and say, wow, there's a huge demand. There's a huge need for this workforce. But what are the vulnerabilities? What happens if we don't have this workforce? What happens when we don't have a cyber literate workforce and a population of talent that can fill these positions? Well, the vulnerability is national security level. The vulnerabilities provide a playground for cyber criminals to go in and have data breaches, go in with ransomware, with malware. Stats show that there are billions in losses every year, and state-sponsored hacking groups posing a huge threat to businesses and industry that are very, very small. So the hometown flower shop that's on the corner of 2nd and Main to the Fortune 100 organization, that those threats are crippling to both ends of the spectrum. So the critical shortage requires action. It's a national security crisis. And that's where NICERC steps into play. What we want to do is we want to help develop workforce programs that ensures that the output is workforce driven, that is employability among students. So we've developed the Cyber Interstate. The Cyber Interstate is a twist on the analogy of the pipeline. And I'll tell you, I really don't like the pipeline analogy, because a pipeline assumes what you put in is what you get out. The fact that we can create a interstate that has multiple on-ramps and multiple off-ramps allows a student to graduate high school, for instance, and have 3 options. One of these options is they can go straight into the workforce. One of those options is they can go straight into a 2-year university program. And one of those options is they can go straight into a 4-year university. So what we have to do as educators is not get our students ready to pass the test, not get our students ready to graduate high school, but to fundamentally get our students employable so they can have the skill sets necessary to graduate high school and to go into one of those three areas. Now, just like every good interstate has off-ramps, a good interstate also has on-ramps. And so being able to target students who get off the cyber education interstate for a reason that they need to go into a career, or their socioeconomic status doesn't afford them the opportunity at the given time to get a 2-year, 4-year degree. So they go straight into the workforce, earn some dollars, but they can just as easily and equally get back on the interstate at any time in their academic career, in their professional career, any time in their life when they want to get back on the interstate. So we have to focus on workforce development to solve the national security crisis in our country. One of the things that is also important to know that players in K-12, players in 2-year, players in 4-year, and industry and government all have to chat with each other. They all have to talk to each other. To remain on this cyber interstate, there has to be cohesion between 2-year, 4-year, and K-12, all tied in with industry and government. So with all that knowledge, you talk about and you see the huge monumental need, you talk about the cyber workforce shortage, you talk about the national security crisis, and you acknowledge that, okay, we have to have workforce development programs. We have to have a pipeline. We have to have a pathway that leads students to an outcome that is an industry-based certification, a knowledge, skills, and abilities to go and continue that understanding into the future with 2- or 4-year programs. And so what we're going to do right now is we're going to touch on this K-12 dot, this first bit of the interstate, the first mile marker of the interstate that we often lose time about. We often don't focus on because it's a long-term disciplined approach to solving this workforce issue, but it's absolutely critical. It's absolutely important that we focus in on this mile marker 1 of the cyber interstate. So the NICERC solution with this has been the development of content and curriculum that Chuck's going to get into here in a minute, but the development of content curriculum that ties together fundamentals of cybersecurity into content curriculum at the elementary and middle school level, but also develops elective courses at the high school level that focuses on tangible skill sets that can be used for students to gain knowledge, skills, and abilities for their careers. And one of the things that I want to note before I kick it over to Chuck is that all of this is a priority from the Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency, which is a division of the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. CISA has put out a grant that NICERC is a recipient of that is geared towards cybersecurity education, training, and assistance. What we want to do and what DHS CISA wants to do is we want to ensure that K-12 educators have zero barriers to teach content that's cyber focused. We want zero barriers to be able to show that a teacher can fulfill a student's opportunity for a degree and career in cyber. So the U.S. Department of Homeland Security gives the NICERC a multi-year grant to develop really cool stuff, to train educators on this really cool stuff. And you know what? We have to give it away for free. And that's just a shame, isn't it? We have to give all this content away at no cost. And today, and I want to make sure you know this, that just because it's free doesn't mean it's cheap. Today marks $32.5 million that DHS and CISA has invested in this program, that they have invested in the development of this content curriculum. And you're going to be able to see the depth of this content that Chuck's going to show you with these pathways. So let's get into the meat, let's get into the fun, let's talk about what other states are doing with regards to pathways, what other schools are doing with regards to pathways, and what other districts are doing with regards to pathways. So Dr. Gardner, I'm going to kick it on over to you.
Excellent. Thanks, Kevin. So I'm going to, as soon as the picture's back, I'm going to grab my screen and hoist it up here. So if you can see my image at the top, my presentation is over here, so I'm going to be a little bit diverted. But so what I've got is a couple tabs we're going to go through in the next couple minutes, just to talk about some of the curriculum that NICERC hosts. Another version of that Cyber Interstate Kevin just had up on his display. For those who might be watching on a smaller device, you might be able to see these logos a little bit better. But what you see here is our progression of content from elementary through high school space. 15 titles in all. Many are a year's worth of curriculum or more. Obviously, when we talk about high school pathways to graduation, we're going to spend most of our time in the high school space, which starts with the green into the blue and the purple. But just to give a quick preview of some of the elementary and middle school space, which spans the red, yellow, green on this interstate graphic here, we've got some outstanding new elementary content in the area of STEAM fundamentals, which is tied to the new NGSS phenomenological standards. So we're doing some great investigations into science content areas that includes math and ELA connections, as well as cyber pop-outs for opportunities to engage in relevant cyber conversations with grade appropriate topics. Our middle school content STEM EDA, there's 3 levels, 3 grades worth of content here in 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade, tied to the previous version of the science standards. And we're working on an upgrade of this content now, which is going to, again, bring in the new NGSS, the CSTA, the ISTE standards. So we're going to have a lot of cross-cutting content that's also going to include references to math, ELA, as well as cyber and cybersecurity. If you're in the computer science space and not a computer science teacher, you might have heard computational thinking. We're developing content to support computational thinking in elementary, middle, and high school. In elementary and middle, we've got a variety of modules that brings computational thinking lessons into specifically English, math, and science classrooms in 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th grades. We're currently working on new content that's going to be a year-long high school course to support some of these pathways that we're working on in the areas of STEM and computer science and cybersecurity. Cyber fundamentals is some pop-out content. If you've got microbits in the classroom, or you've got Legos in the classroom, or you've got some cyberbots, we've got some connections here to some activities that can be used to kind of expand the use of those products in the classroom. And then we move on into our high school content, starting with algebra, cyber literacy 1, cyber literacy 2, kind of the core of our pathway offerings. We'll talk about them in just a little bit. Cyber society has been making some headway lately in some state departments of education offerings for pathways. And then some of our newer content, cybersecurity fundamentals, crypto math, computer science, physics, one of our older courses developed under a NASA grant before we were supported by DHS, an advanced math course, cyber science, and then A+ to support the CompTIA exam, which cybersecurity will also support the Security Plus exam. So this is our library content, and what I want to get to talk about now is what some states and some of our partners are doing across the country with regards to pathway implementation of high school content towards graduation credit. So I'm going to start in Louisiana, obviously our backyard. We've been working with schools across the state here since before I started working with NICERC content. I came on board as a classroom teacher in New Orleans in 2011 and kind of was introduced to this content then. But for a year or two before that, this content was under development. So we've been working within the state of Louisiana for many years. And they have a pathway initiative called Jumpstart. And their newest Jumpstart initiative is called Louisiana STEM Pathway Jumpstart Initiative. So we've worked within the STEM initiative to develop a cybersecurity Jumpstart pathway. So I'll show you that one real quick. So this is a document that's provided by the Louisiana Department of Education. It's downloadable at the Louisiana Believes website. You can search for STEM pathway cybersecurity. And what we've got here is this is a two-page brief that kind of gives an idea of how a high school student can progress through 4 or 5, depending on if you're teaching some high school courses in middle school, 4 or 5 year pathway towards graduation that includes NICERC content. So for example, we've got, like I mentioned, cyber literacy 2, cyber science, and computer science as one of our 4 required courses. So Louisiana STEM pathway has 4 required courses, which will earn you what they call a silver seal. And then if you take 4 requireds plus 4 electives, 4 additional courses, you'll get a gold seal with your graduation diploma. So in our additional courses, we've got our cyber society content. We've got that computational thinking content we're working on. But then we've also included some courses from other pathways and other relevant kind of AP, dual enrollment, higher level courses that states offer and is a part of Louisiana course offerings. So Prob and Stats, AP CSP, AP CSA, AP Calculus, Physics to give us science credit, AP Psychology. We pushed hard to get AP Psychology into a cybersecurity pathway because we want to make sure that as we're talking to students who have the desire maybe to study cybersecurity, that they have the opportunity to learn about the human mind and how human thought processes work, because we know that ethics is a big concern of cybersecurity. So we want to make sure that students who progress through the pathway get the opportunity to learn a little bit about what makes the mind tick. But then we've got some CompTIA supporting courses as well. And then Louisiana also has some career readiness courses that are applicable to this pathway. But for the main part, our 5 core courses that make up a cyber pathway includes the 2 cyber literacy courses, which is an intro to cyber engineering. We're using a Parallax Bobot, ShieldBot with Arduino, or a CyberBot. So with those 3 platforms, we've got the ability to program in BASIC, in our Arduino C, and in Python. So it's intro to cyber engineering course. They're using the robot to build circuits, to learn about text-based coding, and also to learn about autonomy and how sensors can be added to devices to make them somewhat self-aware. Cyber science is kind of another additional cyber course that's going to kind of go further and deeper into the technical and even some of the ethical concerns that we talk about in cyber literacy. And then our computer science course, which is based on the Raspberry Pi. So we've got some more Python programming happening there. Or if a school offers it, they can take a AP computer science course, which will count for one of the 4 required courses. Cyber society, which you're going to see as we move throughout a couple other pathway opportunities. Cyber society is our unplugged or technical light cyber content for schools or classrooms that might not have a computer lab or a set of robots or the the technical chops to get through a programming course. Cyber Society is our opportunity to have conversations about humanities and liberal arts and ethical concerns around cyber, things like cyber law, cyber business, cyber terrorism, cyber ethics, and even some analysis and investigation of cyber themed scenarios. I've got some specific tabs to give you a little more information on this in just a second, but those are really the core courses that make up our pathway offerings, specifically in Louisiana, but other states as well. So this is the first pathway we're talking about, the cybersecurity pathway for Louisiana. Also in Louisiana, there's a desire to get in front of pre-educators, so high school students who have shown the propensity to want to study education. The University of Louisiana at Monroe was the sponsor behind a pre-educator pathway. And to give students a taste of STEM content and cyber content that they might be teaching in the classroom, included in that pathway is NICERC cyber content, including, as I mentioned, Cyber Society, CyberLit 1-2, and Cyber Science, as well as the CompTIA course. So a student who's interested in teaching STEM, has the opportunity to take these courses in high school and get some experience with our content that they might want to bring into their classroom when they become a teacher. So this is another Louisiana pathway sponsored by the University of Louisiana at Monroe. The last one from Louisiana I'm going to bring up is an older pathway. This one was written back in 2014, 2015, when I was still in the classroom. This is our cyber engineering jumpstart pathway. So this is a little bit of a bigger document. As you can see, it's 32 pages from the state of Louisiana, but this is part of what they call Jumpstart 1.0. So this was one of their first rounds of credentialing and graduation pathways. So the list of courses is extensive in this one. So the Jumpstart 2.0, I think you can appreciate, is a little bit more pared down. But we've got our core courses in here. There's Cyber Society, CyberLit 1-2, Cyber Science, Computer Science is in this pathway as well. So this is a little more far-reaching to give more schools opportunities to give students the ability to graduate with a Jumpstart endorsement. But this is cyber engineering for students in Louisiana. One of our other state partners is the state of Kentucky Department of Education. Created a series of IT pathways in 2017, 2018. And we were happy to be written into what they call their cyber engineering pathway. So this is, again, a blend of programming, cybersecurity, hardware engineering disciplines. But as you can see down here, it includes our CyberLit 1-2, Cyber Science, Computer Science, as well as a couple other courses that come standard with Kentucky Department of Education course offerings. So this is a model that your state subscribes to, or if you're a Kentucky teacher, we're happy to talk you through some of these course offerings. And if you don't have access to them, as Kevin mentioned, all of our stuff is free, so we want to make sure that we get you registered for access to our content. These next couple tabs we're going to work through. I'm going to show you the website a little bit. Moving to the East Coast briefly, we've got some partners in St. Mary's Parish in Annapolis, Maryland, and they have the St. Isidore Cyber Program. So this is an academy within a high school where they're teaching some of our NICERC content as part of a sequence to graduation. So students that are enrolled in the St. Isidore Cyber Program are going to see our cyber literacy, cyber science, and physics course, which are all based on those robotics platforms I mentioned before, the BOBot, the ShieldBot, and the CyberBot. So we've done some extensive professional development training to bring teachers in St. Isidore up to speed on these 3 courses. And since I think this was 2017, Kevin may have to date check me here, but they've been teaching this pathway for their high school students since then. So this is not quite a state-backed pathway, but this is how a school can institute a pathway to graduation for students within a cohort within the school. Last thing I'll mention is Lee Magna High School down in East Baton Rouge Parish. So they teach a lot of pathway content. They have the opportunity to present a variety of pathways. Let me scroll up and show you real quick. They have Louisiana has a series of pre-engineering pathways that are sponsored by LSU, Louisiana State University, and one of them talks about some of the pathway electives. Here's a digital design and emergent media pathway, and then there's a biomedical pathway. But we've partnered with Lee's offering of a computer science pathway, including our cyber literacy content, our computer science content, and again, the computational thinking content that's being developed. So again, this is another example within a school of how students can work towards graduation credits that might include some kind of NICERC endorsement or state endorsement if we can swing it. So just some high-level overview as we approach the 30-minute mark. This is Canvas, our learning management system. This is our library where all of our content is hosted. And as Kevin mentioned, all of our content is free to teachers across the country. So if you don't have access to our Canvas yet, we need to get you access. So for example, when you log into Canvas, you're going to see a dashboard page which has icons based on which courses you have access to. So that might be algebra or A+ or advanced math. The one I had open, which I'm going to go back to, is cyber literacy. So within cyber literacy, I see we've got 3 platforms available. Like I mentioned, Parallax Bobot, Arduino, ShieldBot with Arduino, and the CyberBot. So within cyber literacy, we've got content available across all 3 platforms. The lessons and the deliverables are essentially identical. What's different about them is the programming language, and in some cases, the introduction to a lesson has to change because of some of the programming syntax differences. But we're covering electricity, so we're building circuits. We're talking about series and parallel. We're talking about Ohm's law and Kirchhoff's laws. Then we're moving into robotics, and we're building the bot, and we're putting sensors on it, and we're making it navigate around a space. But a critical component of most of our content is the cross-curricular aspect of learning that happens in each classroom. And we make a big deal on the liberal arts content of CyberLit 2, cyber science. So what we're doing in the liberal arts section of cyber literacy is we're introducing students to what it means to be a cyber citizen. So an introduction to humanities and cyber. How do those 2 areas blend? What it means to be in this world now where we see emerging artificial intelligence and emerging Internet of Things. We talk a lot about current events, malware, network attacks, what it means to be part of a network, passwords, cyberbullying, debates. A lot of various content is discussed here, and it's cyber connections. My point for showing you this link is that when we talk about educating the whole citizen, right, that whole cyber citizen in a cybersecurity or even just a cyber engineering aspect, we want to make sure that they understand just because I can build it doesn't mean I should build it. Just because I can break it doesn't mean I should break it. So we go into here some ethical and legal concerns, you know, and how they should approach this interaction to this new cyber world that they live in. Cyber literacy 2 is formatted much the same way. We've got our 3 platforms. Systems engineering, because in CyberLit 2, what we're doing is we're building more and more complex circuits. So we're adding components at the same time. So it's more of a systems engineer's approach than it is just straight robotics. But again, the liberal arts covers a lot of Fourth Amendment, some search and seizure activities, again, debates and cyberbullying. We want to make sure we're touching on that stuff wherever possible. Like I mentioned, our computer science content is based on the Raspberry Pi. If you have Raspberry Pis or some other Python platform in your classroom, we've got we've got computer science that also has some. And the last one, cyber society. So again, this is no text, so we're good. Cyber society, again, this is our intro, our
We may be having some audio troubles on Chuck's side, but I'll kind of kick it, you know, just he was touching on cyber society content, and that was the humanity-based content and the ability to not use technology and have a relevancy of cybersecurity. And one of my favorite things is the ACES content. I think that may be where Chuck's going on. Chuck, are you back?
Yeah, can you hear me? Check.
Yep, there we go.
Yep. So we've got some media literacy when you want to talk to students about spotting truth in reporting and bias in reporting. We've got some media literacy for middle school and high school. But what Kevin was saying, again, one of our favorites. It's a really engaging, unplugged tabletop activity is called ACES, an analysis and investigation of cyber scenarios. And what we got here is just a variety of content that is non-technical, but collaborative, critical thinking, and helping students work together. So we've got a series of events that have happened. These are fictitious. They've been written up, though, to resemble news feeds and headline articles and intercepted emails and digital security logs that have been extracted from systems. So these events have happened somewhere in time across the globe, and students are going to be presented with briefing folders that are going to provide for them the whole environment, the whole scenario. There's no need to go to Wikipedia or to go to Google Maps to find out where these things happen. Everything that you need to know is contained within these briefing folders. And the students are going to work together in restricted time and also restricted resources. So it's intended that you only give one briefing folder per team of students so that not everyone has access to all the documents, because then they wouldn't have to share. So we want to make sure that they're using their English language arts skills. So if you give it to them on paper, they can mark it up, they can annotate their text, they can write in the margins, they can underline, circle, square, whatever they've been taught by their ELA teachers. But then they have to come together and present what happened, why did it happen, who do they think is responsible for it, and what should, if any, U.S. response be as a result of the scenario. Real quick, an international hotel that's going to be the host of some peace talks has had a lockdown in the morning. They have to figure out what has happened. There have been some State Department classified documents have been leaked to some news media outlets. They have to figure out why this is happening. There's a protest scheduled in Chicago that's marching across a bridge, and all of a sudden the bridge opens up and throws people into the river. They have to figure out what's happening there. We've got some alien contacts, some radio signals coming from outer space. They've got to figure out what's going on there. There's been a hydroelectric plant in France that has failed, and they have to figure out what has happened, why. A satellite is degrading out of orbit, and they have to figure out why. And then a national blackout that starts on one region and spreads, really gripping based on some recent events. We had some recent DOS attacks over the last couple of years on the East Coast, and power outages, and you have to figure out, is this real, or is there something else happening here? And finally, another bridge module. So they're just really great content that does require some photocopying, but engaging and collaborative work for students to work through as a group.
Chuck, real quick, when we talk about pathways, many cases, many instances, we talk about the need for industry-based certification. So talk to some of the IBCs that students are able to obtain with these pathways, with these courses.
Yep, great. So thanks for catching that. So the obvious ones, right, are A+ and Security Plus from CompTIA. These courses, so our A+ certification prep, if you have no familiarity with that course, it's a big test, it's a big exam. There's a lot of preparation required for it. It's actually 2 individual tests that are taken together. So we've got a course that is going to prep students for that exam. And by the way, teachers, you can also use it to prep for your exams if you have to be certified before you teach it. Cybersecurity Fundamentals is written more holistically to support the Security Plus exam from CompTIA. So we're hitting on all the standards from the CompTIA Security Plus exam, but we've also got some additional content in there. Just because cybersecurity is such a new and emerging area, we want to make sure that students are well prepared and well versed to hit these opportunities for employment running. Cyber Literacy 1 and 2 are working well towards getting kids ready for CompTIA's IT Fundamentals, or the Digital Literacy certification. I forget the certifying body. IC3's Digital Literacy, I think, is the cert. It's been a while. So Cyber Literacy 1 and 2, we're using to prep kids for IC3 Digital Literacy or CompTIA's IT Fundamentals. At this point, we don't have anything to support CompTIA's Net Plus, but trust me when I say we're working on it. It's on our radar, but probably nothing that's going to hit our library during this school year.
Nice, nice. Yeah. Well, we're almost coming up on time. And there's one thing that I want to show everyone, excuse me, before we depart. And we talk about these pathways. We talk about the importance of pathways. We talk about the importance of getting students introduced to the world of cyber. Ultimately, we want to make sure that we have a workforce, but we want to make sure that we have students who can adequately live, work, and play in cyberspace. When we talk about cyber, it has implications in all industries, whether you're in agriculture, healthcare, IT, business. They require you to have a basic understanding of cyber. And so every student cyber literate, that's always been our goal, to be able to get every student an awareness. Excuse me. So one of the things that we did recently was the study on the pathway, the output of high school and where students are going in 2-year and 4-year institutions. And what I'm going to show you next is some pilot data that we've gathered from 2 partner universities and colleges. And what you see here is a representation of the freshman enrollment in a cyber engineering, computer science, and computer information systems degree program. And the horizontal axis down here are all the feeder high schools that have gone into this program. And you see that the orange schools are the schools that have taught or are teaching NICERC's content curriculum. And the schools in blue are the schools who do not teach NICERC's content curriculum. And what we're able to infer here is that schools who teach NICERC's content curriculum are sending more students into cyber-based degree programs. This is a 2-year community college. Again, same premise, feeder schools going into there, and we're seeing an infinitely of 4x, 4 times as many students who are being sent into a cyber-based degree program from high school teaching NICERC's content curriculum. And I say teaching NICERC's content curriculum. What I also can draw a conclusion to is the importance that high schools, middle schools, and elementary schools need to be integrating 21st century skills, 21st century applications, 21st century context, so that students have an awareness of what opportunities exist, what the degree opportunities and both 2-year, 4-year degree opportunities are, and what career opportunities there are. When I was in the classroom, I would always ask my students, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I got answers from doctor, lawyer, veterinarian, police officer, until one student said, how can you expect me to tell you what I want to be when I grow up when I don't know what all the options are? And I think that was a fundamental moment where I realized that we as educators have to be introducing students to these career opportunities that A, don't exist today, but B, that they don't know about. And so the pathways that Chuck talked about, whether you're in Virginia, Kentucky, Oscar, our friend from Vermont, is on the call here as well. Whatever state you're in, you have an opportunity to build out a pathway to get students introduced to cybersecurity and to be a direct pipeline into 2-year, 4-year, and the workforce. So that wraps it up for us. We want to make sure that we leave an opportunity for any kind of question. So I am going to allow folks to talk here. I'm going to dial in everyone. All you have to do is unmute yourself, and then you will be able to chat, to ask questions, to be able to interact with Chuck, myself, or Claire. So we'll leave it open, and if there's anybody that has any questions, feel free to unmute yourself and to chime in.
Yeah, let me say while we're waiting, if you don't follow NICERC on social media, you need to. We're on Facebook and Twitter, and if you're not, this is what you're missing out on. So some really funny stuff. These, by the way, are our bots. So we have our Shield bot with Arduino, our Bow bot, and our Cyber bot with Microbit, again, from our partners at Parallax up in Rockland, California. And we've got, this is the content that students are learning on and practicing in their classroom. But, you know, just some of the really great stuff we're sharing on social media. If you're not there, get there.
Well, perfect. Well, if there are no questions or if you haven't figured out how to unmute yourself, you know, you can tweet at us, you can Facebook us, you can email us. I'm going to put our contact information on the screen here shortly, but thank you all for joining us. This is going to be the first of many webinars, and we are going to, you know, consistently being asked you to give us feedback. What do you want to hear about? What do you want us to chat about? And so we'll look forward to many more great webinars to come. And again, I'm going to pop up our contact information for you to see, and wishing you all you know, the very best, and we'll be in touch and chat with you soon. You guys have a great one.